Hello.
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 We at least need a hack doc to take notes.
Who is making it?
Right.
Does no volunteer mean I'm volunteering for it? Or are you working on it right now, Sajay?
I was about to click the button, but you volunteered.
Go ahead and click it.
No, God. Right. I don't know how to transfer the notes or the ownership over, so we need to figure that out. But most of the meeting notes we'll copy it over onto the repository anyway. So
yeah, we'll sort that out later on. Just make sure whatever you've got the sharing setting set so that other people can view and edit it. Because I think by default, HackMD made them all private.
yeah.
Didn't used to. I can only imagine what happened to make that change.
I'll do the administrative stuff, copying the template over. If you can see the notes, then
Looks good to me.
you'll have to put this somewhere in the. Do we have a repository? I think that would also be something that we need to create, right?
The Git repo, not yet, but yeah, I think we'll need to ask OCI to give us that.
Okay.
Okay, my work here is done.
We don't have an agenda, or we have to create an agenda.
I guess we can also, unless I missed this by being late, sorry about that,
No,
sort of go around and get what we're all trying to get out of this. I am excited about the prospect of this being an actual documented thing. I mean, documented more than, well, Docker has docs, which mean effectively everyone has docs, but their docs are go look at Docker's docs and go look at Docker's docs, and here is how ours are slightly different than that, which I think has always been difficult to implementers and also difficult to implementations, because it's like, yeah, it's weird that my registry's auth docs are go look at docker.com. I don't know why originally auth was pushed out of scope in OCI. I don't have enough or I mean, maybe it wasn't pushed, it was just never thought of. But it has always seemed like a missing piece, because the OCI specs imagine and assume that there is no auth and that all images are easily pushable and pullable by everybody on Earth, which is nonsense. So I'm excited to have this more written down and documented, even if we literally like just codify what Docker docs have and say, yes, this is the way that you should do this. I think we will probably not get away with that because that's too easy. But that would even be a win to me if we just said, yes, Docker's auth docs are the way that you should do this, or the way that clients should assume all registries work. I will cede the floor if anybody has anything else to say on that topic. Yeah. And I'll unseat it if no one else talks. As an opening gambit, how do people feel about literally just saying, like, starting on OCI's docs are a copy of Docker's docs, and then we figure out where it doesn't fit? I mean, I don't think we would be able to get away with literally doing that, but if we just say this is what we sort of intend and assume that auth looks like for the most part, then we can argue about the next 10% of it that actually matters.
I think for better or worse, that's probably a good starting point. It gives something concrete to work from. There's definitely very clear issues that we can work off of and work to improve, but at least we have a starting point. There's many things within that document that I would love to change in the process, but also knowing change is hard and slow and all of that fun stuff. But having something documented would be great. In addition to that, there's a lot of things not covered in that document that need added. I would say one specific pain point that I would call out is that there's, even in that document, there's nothing about error handling within authorization servers. And so some people have interpreted that to mean, well, we're going to treat errors from the auth service the same way, or we're going to use the same error handling for auth that we use for registry. Others said, no, we're going to stick to more of like an HTTP spec kind of a thing, or no, we're going to do something completely different. That's something that's even the Docker docs not defined at all, and I think is definitely a missing point within that. And then if I can remove the line of the Docker docs that says the auth service is not responsible for auth, I am happy.
Why do we even have this server? Yeah, I think that's useful, right? Like, I guess out of curiosity, what do you, if you were the dictator of this group, would you have auth server errors handled like registry errors? Or like, you could presumably just add that to your docs and say like auth server errors are handled like registry errors.
I've been very tempted to start modifying the docs. I've just been holding back a little bit due to ramifications involved with that.
Yeah.
But personally, I am not a fan of the way the registry handles errors in some scenarios. And I think it's led to a lot of issues within, I think, most every registry client I've come across. Because we can't just check for status code, you have to, I mean, they only implement very specific status codes, and then you kind of have to parse it to actually figure out exact reasons. And so nothing is actually handled anywhere. And so I that ship has sailed though. So maybe the answer is, hey, we should just match it because it's not great, but at least maybe it's out there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think like a little, if I learned anything from the refers working group, what do I call it? Experience. It's that we should probably bias towards producing specs that describe the current state of the world, imperfect though it is, rather than try to specify a perfect state of the world and then fight about getting everybody up to that perfect state of the world, right? Like, I think if there are cases where clearly registry A and registry B have opposite and incompatible, one thinks the sky is blue and one thinks the sky is green, like we need to mediate that somehow, or say the sky is unspecified in this doc. But I want to try to be better in this group about not taking this as an opportunity to improve the state of the world too much, but first document the state of the world, and that is an improvement. Like, even just having a document of the state of the world is an improvement. That's going to make me sad at some points throughout this, because there are going to be times where we hit a point where I'm like, damn it, I'd really like to mediate this issue, or like have registry B learn what color the sky is. But I think practically speaking, it's going to be a lot better time for all of us if we just like focus on documenting the state of the world for the most part. Do people, I mean, I think especially Sajay and Brandon, how do you feel about that as a light organizing principle for this group as opposed to the refers working group?
Brandon, you want to?
So refers, we had the advantage that we were making something new that didn't exist. And so we are coming into the scenario of something already exists out there, people already using it. It would be good to make sure that whatever we create doesn't break that. At the same time, I would like to see us, as much as we can, defer to HTTP specs and not have so much definition inside of OCI where possible. And so if someone has already defined what OpenID Connect looks like, there's no need for us to reinvent it. That stuff already exists out there in other specs. We can just point to them. And so I'd like to try to find that happy middle ground between the two of use HTTP specs where we can, but make sure that we define how that applies to what OCI is doing and what people are already doing today with Docker clients.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because I feel like, Sajay, you're about to say something, I think. Never mind.
No, go ahead.
Because I do think that this area particularly has had the rubber stamp of because Docker did it this way. Whether it was the bearer tokens or all these different workflows, it was just because Docker did it this way. And even like which errors are returned, the conformance was because Docker did it this way, and it's fine. So there is some amount of like historical documentation, but if there is, like Brandon just said, like actually the industry standard is this particular error code, why don't we push towards like the heavy should for that, and then be able to have any kind of compliance checks or any kind of conformance checks, to say like we've kind of acknowledged, hat tipped where the state is. And it's not like we're tackling brand new territory, but at least having an open conversation of like, this would be the correct error code, this would be the correct headers, whatever it is, and then start moving towards that new future and how to like mark those versions, mark that progression.
This could also turn into one of those scenarios where you need to be liberal in what you accept, but very conservative in what you generate. And so we push people to be generating the new, shiny, good solution, but be accepting that there are going to be a lot of different clients out there and a lot of different servers out there you're interoperating with, and to be liberal in how you interoperate with.
I agree. However, two things about that make me scared. One is we're dealing with Auth, which you need to be a little more biased towards shut up and go away, as opposed to, oh, it's, your token was only off by a little bit. Like, I don't think that's what you were proposing, but that's, a straw man. But that's one thing that I think we need to be careful about. And I think another is just the idea of this being like that our charter should be some shiny new thing, I think is a trap. We need to document what the current state of the world is and all of its gross many corner cases. And I think we have an opportunity to say new implementations should blah, blah, blah. but not say that clients must only accept blah, blah, blah. I think we have, like, that's the only place where we have room to say, to express an opinion about the right thing. When we're talking to a registry implementation or an auth implementation, we can say, when in doubt, you should probably do it this way. But to clients, it needs to be, listen, you're going to talk to a 8-year-old Quay server sometimes, and it's going to do some wacky thing, and that's fine. That needs to be fine. I don't want to invent hurdles that we then try to go back and convince 8-year-old Quay servers to adopt, because they won't, and it'll cause a lot of wasted effort on our side.
That's where I lead toward the liberal. And so it's acknowledging that there are going to be both old clients and old servers out there. And so document that there is going to be a way that this has been done in the past. So be accepting that there are going to be old clients and old servers that we're working with, but try to get us moving toward a nice new shiny.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with that, very frequently keep running into instances where the current state is extremely broken with regards to, I would say, even like the registry client or the default registry client or distribution client, registry client, whatever it's called, within like the open source distribution server, has the incorrect authorization for Docker's own auth server. All of that is broken and wrong. I would say, specifically calling out that Docker's own auth does not do registry style errors, but all the clients assume that it does. And so I think first pass is definitely, let's document what it is. I would really hope that there is a very quick follow on of how would we like it to work, kind of a thing, or what would be better. In a world where we could, start doing polls where basic auth wasn't the only way to do it would be amazing. First off, so yeah, I think there's definitely going to be 2 initiatives. Yeah, let's just document it, and then let's hopefully come up with some slightly better way.
I actually have to jump off to another thing, but this has already been better than I expected. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you at the next one.
I had a few procedural questions. We need a repository and a place to file issues, maybe create like we did for the previous working group. So how do we go about this? Do you want to create an issue on the TOB to create the repository?
Yep, we can create that. And I think probably the best thing is to make sure that Amy or Chris ping on that one, and they'll usually take care of that pretty quickly for us. We probably need to tell them who has maintainer access over there.
Okay.
I'm guessing, just looking through our thing there, might just be easier to pick on the proposed owners. Just work from that list.
Yeah, we can start with that.
Somehow you didn't get on that list, Ajay. I don't. Did you not volunteer intentionally?
I try to stay out of the lists.
you tried as hard as you could, and then you got sucked into like organizing all of this stuff.
Easier to be on the back. Yeah, I think there's enough representation from Microsoft on that, so that's why I didn't want to join it. Just from a diversity perspective.
I'll go ahead and throw an issue up over on the TOB asking to create a repo to have the proposed owners there all set as maintainers, and then we'll go from there.
All right, thanks. There are other people on the call, not from OCI. Does anybody want to share anything or? Or just say hi, so we know who people are.
I'm not OCI. I'm new to a lot of things, including OCI. But I've been watching a lot of the older Kubernetes architecture and SIG Auth videos from way back 2016 and 17. So it's interesting to join the authentication discussion in the early stage about OCI. So definitely interesting.
Hi folks, Aviral here. So I'm actually an engineer on Sajay's team. And yeah, I think authentication authorization is just an interesting topic to me. So happy to.
Okay, I don't want to force everybody to introduce themselves, but I think one of the other items that probably technical items that I wanted to discuss. Oh, Josh, do you want to introduce yourself? We don't know you.
Oh, hey, I'm Josh. I work with Jason, who is one of the people here. But no, I had like a link to share when there's no topics left.
So couple of things is I've just captured some notes, basically just getting a baseline of where Docker authentication is, understanding that. Brandon, to your point of how can we talk to different registries, I think I'll give some introduction for Nathan as well, just to kind of like give an overview. Nathan's been working on a lot of integration with other registries, like pulling images from NVIDIA, pulling images from different types of registries. And the authentication is so different or is like so unique that we have to make changes every time we talk to a new registry. So the goal for me for this specification is to provide some guidance for other operators who definitely they're going to be more coming along. And how can we tell them this is what we expect and write a conformance against that to at least give, make the conversation a little bit more, this is what I want versus this is what they have kind of a thing, and kind of give a rough guidance. For example, one of the things we saw with NVIDIA is that they don't have the service field, but the Docker specs have. And so how do we trust that endpoint and things like that? Even though just small edge cases of how much do we loosen the spec to make everybody happy, right? That was one portion. And there's one more topic I would like to discuss, which is there was an ask from the WASM community. I don't think the person who actually made the ask is here, but one proposal was, can we have what you say an upload access token equivalent? Like you get a bucket and you can kind of upload an image or like push an image through something like a SaaS URL, like what many storage APIs do, like S3 and all that. So somebody wants to publish an image. What is the easiest way for them to kind of like get some scoped token that they can make this access of uploading through a signed shared access key or something like that? So I'll follow up and ask the person to maybe write this up and propose it here. That might be net new and might be more controversial rather than speccing what we have. So it'll be two different. It might even go beyond the working group, right? Like, so that's the other thing, whether we want to take those new kind of asks versus how much do we complete by just speccing this out. Also the scope, Brandon, you mentioned about OpenID Connect. Do you want to bring that in to this one?
I don't know specifically that, but just documenting some of the bearer tokens and stuff like that. I think some of that workflow is already documented outside of what Docker's been doing.
Okay.
Especially if you don't get too detailed with how that scope is defined in there, you can just get the header, see the header was there. No, you need to go out and get the bearer token, respond. A lot of that's HTTP documented specs that we could leverage.
Okay. I'm done.
For the benefit for newcomers like me. Is there any like either article, blog, or even computer science theory things about this particular topic? Can study get deeper and be actually useful, helpful?
Yeah, the Docker one is probably the best that Sajay is linked to.
Yeah, this might be a good opportunity to share what I wanted to a minute ago. I just put it in the chat. So I've never worked at Google, so this may seem biased, but I do work with John, who put this together. But a couple of years ago, I was having the same question that Victor had, and this was really, really helpful. Both from like the basic auth and token auth to the cred helpers. I don't know if cred helpers is something that will be in scope for this group, but yeah, there's like a document there with pictures and oh, okay, don't do dark mode.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that last sentence. Does not compute. I must do dark mode. There is no other option.
Well, I'm sure we can re-release these images with a white background, but
it's the story of my life watching these. I've not the first time I've encountered it. What's interesting to me, I think the helper one went through it, and the OAuth 2 is probably another good one there. These can be opened in a, yeah, you can view the raw image and then it shows up nicer in the dark mode. The thing that caught my attention on the first link you had shared earlier was that it was really getting into the helpers. And I think we specified in here that the helpers and a lot of that side of this equation was not going to be what we were focusing on this group. As much as I kind of wanted to get into that, folks were like, no, we don't want to dig into that. So I want to be respectful of them and not dig too far into the config part and more focus on the client to registry to auth server.
I think that makes sense. I wonder if there's some language that we can add that, you know, when we figure out how to talk about token auth, I don't know, that links out to all the various cred helpers that exist. Like, these are some implementations of this.
I think where people are going with it was that a cred helper was very Docker specific. And so they were looking at saying, I don't want you to tell me how I'm getting the password. I'll get the password or whatever my one-time token is, or however I get this identifying information. Just tell me from the client side, once I'm talking to a registry server, how I use that information to log into the registry. So they were kind of drawing the line right there.
I guess without sounding like ignorant here, but like, isn't how much of that is then just like IETF standards then?
The more that we can say that it's part of HTTP specs, awesome. I'm good with that. So far, if you look at the Docker spec, though, it gets into, hey, you need to query the V2 thing, ping this to figure out what auth you're talking to.
Right. Okay.
Then you need to go out and generate this scope field and talk to that. None of that is HTTP specs. That's all. We made that up on the fly and turned that into our own spec, which I would love to get rid of all that. or at least make it optional.
I would like to have more clarity around what is repository permissions, what is cross-mount permissions, and who can tag list, who can do. I mean, catalog we deprecated. Those kind of permission sets we need to kind of call out, because there's magic in there, right? A star, and everybody knows it's the star that helps. The problem is, as somebody who's implementing the registry, we end up cooking up who can get star or who can get this repository and things like that. So how do we closing the definition on those are kind of important, is what I'm thinking. Cross-mount is extremely ambiguous, and only people who implement CLIs know that. So
yeah, that is a huge one that John and I have gone back and forth with on the past, saying, "Oh no, it shouldn't implement it that way," and come to find out that it just happens to be how one person does it. Anytime you have a long-running client, things get a lot more complicated. How often should you regenerate your auth requests back and forth? What happens if you already have an existing token from talking to one repository, you talk to a different repository in the future? Is auth per repository? None of that is really spelled out. So there's a lot of this that we can work on.
yeah, so those would totally be non-HTTP or IETF specific. I think those need to be there, because you cannot even write a easy conformance test, right, without the other one is the format of the challenge, right? Not everybody implements it the same way.
It's possible that we could lean on the HTTP specs. So in terms of if I'm talking to a registry with an old credential from talking to one repository and I go talk to a different repository, we could lean on the HTTP spec and say, hey, the right response here is to give you this code and go through and do these responses. And the client should understand that, hey, if I receive that code, I'm supposed to do this. If I receive certain responses, then I'm failing. If I don't receive a certain response, that was a successful login. We can leverage those.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. I think it's already 11:04. I need to drop for another call. But 307 was blocked, like the API, because we all return 307s, but there's no spec because the authentication header needs to be stripped out, right? So those are things that we probably want to document also.
Yeah, how to handle each of the different return codes. Yeah. I would motion we move this back to 30 minutes earlier for future meetings. Because the one person, what's that?
So many people just dropped.
Yeah, a lot of people had to just drop, and we pushed it back for some folks that couldn't even attend this one. So,
yep,
I'm okay.
There are a list of registries that support storing OCI images, or just any registry will do?
We don't specifically list it. We have a conformance test. And if you pass the conformance test, then, hey, your OCI distribution approved kind of thing. You put that stamp of approval on there. So from that perspective, once we define auth, then that would be another thing that would be part of our conformance test, that any registry that wants to say they're an OCI registry could pass that test.
Thanks.
So Brandon, just one item up, which kind of like create the repository, and then we can kind of like start iterating.
Yep, I've got the issue opened up, and I tagged Chris and Amy on that one, so we'll see. And if I need to poke them, I'll send them a DM later on and figure out what's going on with that.
All right, I need to drop, but
yep.
People, and we'll follow up on seeing if we can reschedule it to 30 minutes earlier.
Sounds good.
Take care, folks. Bye.
Take care. For those left, I don't know how much progress we're going to make on this one today.
I guess some of the things would be capturing a few of the goals that just were stated, because as like, just getting the repo created is fine and good, but as we iron out like basically what's in scope, what's out of scope, and I think some of that's already been done, but just so it's kind of the agreeable thing, what does success look like, who all should be involved. Probably just a lot of the framings of the kind of like boilerplate framings of any work group.
Yeah, some of the scope we've got in our initial request.
Yeah.
So we defined what was in and what was out of scope there, just to get this approved. But it's good to remind us all of what we agreed to before.
Okay, I saw the issue opened up about getting the repo. I don't know if that's probably just Chris, but
it might be. But I figure if I tag Amy, Amy knows how to ping Chris as well.
True. Yeah,
they're both on that one.
Superheroes and stuff. Yep,
they are. They do amazing work for us. Yeah, but otherwise we've got in the original proposal a decent kind of semi-scope in there. Probably next steps is going to be, getting the repo in there. We'll start capturing stuff from the Docker spec of here's what it looks like today. I think it would be good to start getting people that have challenges, things that aren't documented in there, like just been mentioning, hey, we don't have error codes well-defined. Others have mentioned, hey, that we don't have a good definition for cross repo blob mounts. How does Auth work in that situation? Getting all of those captured as different use cases, I think would be useful, of things that we want to make sure we cover. And then maybe start to capture, here's some of the HTTP specs that already exist out there that we can start to leverage. That would also be another good starting point there. So I think 3 or 4 or more different big action items already in there. I'll start capturing off mic here some of those thoughts. So on my next step kind of action items here, getting the repo created. That's on the list there. Document the Docker spec as it exists today. Gather any use cases that aren't covered by that so we can go through those next time, I think. And then gather any of the IETF, HTTP specs, whatnot that we want to leverage. Any other big next steps people want to see coming out of this working group?
I don't think so. I mean, anything would be like hopeful, like getting into the territory of new definitions, but I think mostly just having a place for this conversation or even a place for this definition would be the first step.
Yeah, I think new use cases, I think is going to fall into the use use cases that aren't covered.
Yep.
So we'll start to gather those there and figure out how many of those we actually want to solve, because I can imagine people have use cases that will get very big and complex and turn to hairy, thorny issues nobody wants to solve. The easy one I'm thinking of is that there is a desire at some point to start doing auth for things that are across multiple repositories, search, any kind of querying a registry for all repos owned by a user, something like that, that turn to complicated problems.
Sanjay mentioned right now there's every registry have a sort of a workaround customization for each registry. Is there such an information list, like what has been done to customize it for different registries?
I think for the most part, what people have, I mean, you can either look at this from two different points. There is we have almost all implemented the Docker spec itself, and then you turn into the edge cases above and beyond, and that turns into often a registry-specific API. So if you want to do things that aren't part of the spec itself, people will start to implement their own client, their own interface into working with their registry, and that's going to have their own auth interface into it. Some of that gets outside of this, but it would be nice to see how much we can pull that back in to say, you know, you don't necessarily need to write your own API on there. You can start to leverage the OCI with we have extension interfaces in OCI today that people can define. Here's how you put your own API calls within the normal repo paths in terms of working with an OCI registry. So there's a lot of possible use cases in there where we could put this stuff that you don't have to go out and invent your own separate parallel API that's separate from the OCI.
Maybe if you have a complete list, not necessarily complete, but just a list of that might be able to help identify a common pattern for the OCI.
Yeah, I don't know that we even have a complete list of what all the OCI registries out there are today. There are folks that have taken the time to notify us and submit the conformance results back up. A lot of folks have registries that are pretty far along the lines of OCI compatibility, but not 100%, and they haven't bothered submitting a result. Some folks are behind air gaps in DoD environments and don't want us to know they exist. It's got all different spectrums in there. So with that, I think we lost our steam with everybody jumping off at the half-hour mark there. Let's go ahead and wrap this one for today, and then we'll see about moving this back potentially 30 minutes sooner next time, and then we'll have a full meeting. But certainly think about, in terms of what people want to get out of this, start gathering those use cases. I think that would be the most valuable for folks in here. Any use cases that you have that you think would be needed to solving this, start gathering those documents. If you're not already in the Slack channel, start dropping those in the Slack channel or keep those to yourself or wherever makes the most sense. And then we'll start to work from there next time.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the week, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.